work in a non-for-profit, but I'm sure IBM has lots of experience. Just wondering, when you market or advocate your services, is there a difference between what you say to your users versus your administration? And how do you explain the difference?
Maybe I'll start. So the question was about marketing, and do you have different messages and different messaging for different parts of your community, so the users or the administration? I guess two things. First of all, marketing is something that I would say is relatively new in certainly research libraries. It's probably different in terms of public libraries, perhaps, but we've just suddenly realized that we need to be in the marketing business. And so over the last number of years, for example, we've hired communication officers, our own graphic designers, he has a staff of about 6 people now who work on marketing. And I would say 5 years ago we had 0. That's how much it's changed in terms of importance. And it is about getting our message out there and across and promoting what we do. So absolutely you have different audiences that have different messaging. There's absolutely no question. You've got to tailor something quite different for students as opposed to administration versus alumni versus your donor community or students. And we work on creating different vehicles, different events, different engagements that will reflect that kind of different messaging. So Courtney Egan, for example, who's a Guelph State Senior Communications Officer, actually designs communication plans around different audiences and different focus, and then we'll execute those plans with staff from his office as well as from across the library. But it's an interesting question because I think 5 years ago we wouldn't have been paying much attention to this, and now it's pretty intensive work actually.
I think in terms of my career, where I saw the biggest difference between the message that was sent to external stakeholders and internal stakeholders was in the municipal environment when I worked at the City of Toronto. And we would always justify our program as a corporate service in terms of the archives. We looked after the official records of the corporation. Should the corporation be sued? Should the corporation find themselves in the middle of a public relations nightmare, then often it could be the archival record, the evidence of past transactions that could come forward and be used by the corporation to enforce its rights and honor its obligations. But whenever we were talking to the public, we would talk about the heritage of the city and the importance of archives to knowing the city. Because frankly, going into a committee room, going before a corporate services committee and explaining, trying to drive home the relevance of archives to having an informed electorate and participating in creating an understanding of the contemporary built environment by knowing what's happened in the past is a really difficult sell. If, however, you go in and you say, according to the Municipal Act, we could be fined X number of dollars for not maintaining permanent records in a secure environment and then making them accessible. So, based on your constituency, yes, sometimes the message does change. And sometimes it then also has to be built into a marketing strategy, including in the university environment where it's one thing to acquire something and preserve it, but unless it's being used, unless those assets are being maximized in terms of research and teaching, there really is no justification for the expenditure that has been directed towards the acquisition of that material and its long-term preservation. And so therefore you have to get word out, whether it's through electronic newsletters or whether it's through alumni magazines or whether it's through listservs to let people know that this material exists. So marketing becomes a very important part of what we do.
Yes, traditionally, my answer would be, but interestingly, we just changed the name of our marketing and communications to Communications, Programming, and Customer Engagement, which is reflective, I think, more of what the emphasis is now. And the issue about different messages for different audiences is in the social media world that becomes less and less tenable because they all blur together and you don't know where your message goes when you release it. And the other thing I would say about our messaging is it has become more of a conversation. Marketing used to be much more one way, and that's why we call it customer engagement, because it's much more about us saying something and somebody saying something back, and us saying something back, and them saying something back, and that's fruitful and productive and learning, but it's not traditional marketing, I don't think, which is why we've kind of moved away from it. Now we do marketing plans for branch openings and all sorts of like very traditional contained things, but the brand, the overarching concept has really, I think, changed radically for us in the last 3 to 4 years.
Those of you who are interested in marketing, I've got a couple of links that I can send out. Mike mentioned the rather new interest in academic libraries, in marketing and market research and development of appropriate messages and so on. There are a couple of fairly new documents for academic librarians and a couple of studies of the public library realm. And there's also a document that I find really interesting that I wish I heard mentioned more often. It was developed at the Syracuse iSchool called The Librarian's Conversation, which is really the reworking of all the library's systems. And I think you could substitute for library any other organization that provides service to simplify and to simplify them, to pull them together, and to have a conversation framework as the guiding framework, rather than just a delivery. This is what I've got, this is what you need. If there's a match, no, take it, goodbye. And these things are relationship building strategies and not just service delivery entities. Any further questions? Then, on your behalf of the Dean, Seamus Ross, who is at a conference today and is unable to greet you personally, and he sends his greetings, I want to thank all of you for coming and sharing your experience and your perspective with us. It's very valuable to these students as they consider the huge range of possibilities that this degree can take them over many iterations in many settings. It's just a wonderful investment of your time. Thank you very much, all of you.